All right, welcome to week 6 of the Tanya Summary Shiur. We're doing Prakim Yudalid Through Zayin. Those are the Prakim we learned this past week. Without any further ado, let us dive right into it. The Alter Rebbe takes a turn before we were giving definitions and descriptions, all of them based on Gemara and on Midrashim and the like. The Alter Rebbe says that's all been good, and now we're able to start getting to the point. Tanya is supposed to be a practical book, first and foremost, and the Alter Rebbe starts saying these aren't just terms that Chazal are talking about, tzaddik, rasha, beinoni. These are things which actually apply to us. So he says the midah of a beinoni, of being someone that really has a full inclination towards everything worldly and even things which are completely bad, but at the same time having a godly soul which strives for godliness. And the beinoni is a person that commits to trying to side with their nefesh alikis as much as possible, and even though really it should be a 50-50 split, but Hashem helps a person and enables them to really only listen to their godly soul. So this beinoni is something which every person is able to be. A beinoni is nothing fancy in the sense, it's not mois bara, not a tzaddik in that way. We're going to see in the next parak, Eretz Hashem, that a beinoni isn't even necessarily someone that's an Eved Hashem, which we'll get to in Eretz Hashem. But the beinoni is someone just over there, that they're not giving into their Yetzer Hara, they're doing what they can, and Hashem is helping them for the rest of the way. This being a beinoni is something every person is able to do. Every person is able to say to the Nefesh Habahamis, the Yetzer Hara, I do not want to be disconnected from godliness for even one moment. People go on Mesiras Nefesh, they'll give their lives for much smaller things, they'll give their lives. I don't want to be disconnected for even a second. A person is able to make this calculation, able to make this commitment, and they're able to be a beinoni. This is not so with being a tzaddik. Not every person can commit to changing what they like. The Alter Rebbe says clearly, you like it. It's even though it's bad, but not everyone could say that they're mois bara. Not everyone could say that they're disgusted by bad. Maybe the Alter Rebbe could say that, but not myself and not the majority of people. So the Alter Rebbe says, with this we can understand why in the oath that we mentioned in the beginning of Tanya, that before a person is born, they make them take an oath that they will be a tzaddik and that they will not be a rasha. Now we can understand the double language of that oath. Because, foremostly, they tell a person, do your best to be a tzaddik. Not that you need to be a tzaddik, because that's not within your control. You're not able to take an oath that's not within your control. You could say that you're going to do your best, and this is what they're asking of you, even though it's not within your reach entirely. Do your best, strive towards it. And then, besides for striving towards being a tzaddik, but also another important point is don't be a rasha, because every person is able to not be a rasha. Every person is able to be a beinoni. But the Alter Rebbe tells us that there's a practical thing that comes out of this, which is that we need to follow the advice of the Chachamim. The advice of the Chachamim always has a reason that a person needs to try to be disgusted and bad. Not 24/7, but to take some time to try to think about how one thing leads to another, and a taiva can lead to worse places, and through that to try to inspire to be disgusted by it. Not to say that it's a natural inclination, not to say that you'll ever get there. Just this is a thing that we're supposed to try to do. We're supposed to try to actually be disgusted by bad. And the Alter Rebbe says, he says, there's a concept of Ibur Neshamis, a mystical concept in Shar Golgolim, that, not to get into too many details, but the point is that a person can not permanently be a tzaddik, but it's possible for a person to be a tzaddik for the time being, that they'll have the neshama of a tzaddik, even for a moment, for a day, however long it may be. And through this, a person could actually fulfill the shvuah that they made before they were born to be a tzaddik, even though it's not permanent. But when they came down into the world, they did fulfill the shvuah of being a tzaddik, at least for some time, due to their efforts in actually trying to reach there, even though they know that it's not possible for them to get there without divine assistance. So now we move to Parak Tesvav. And the Alter Rebbe says, with this we could understand what it says in the Gemara about the pasuk in Malachi, if I'm not mistaken, that you should go and you should see the difference between the righteous and the wicked, between one that serves Hashem and one that does not serve Him. The Gemara asks a question, the question is asked in the Gemara, I should say, that seemingly the difference between an Oved Elikim and a Lo Yavada is the same thing as the difference between a tzaddik and a rasha. And that's so why are you saying the difference between a tzaddik and a rasha and the difference between an Oved Elikim and a Lo Yavada? So the answer is given that the Oved Elikim and the Lo Yavada are two people, massive lamdanim, massive maskilim in learning, and one of them learns what he's learning, he reviews it 100 times, and the other one reviews it 101 times. So the obvious question is raised, how are you calling this guy someone that doesn't serve Hashem? He's learning, he's doing Chazara 100 times. So the Gemara answers that you could see from the fact that donkey drivers charge a certain amount for going 10 units of distance, and they'll charge they'll charge double for going 11 units of distance, because the one extra unit of distance causes that you're going out of your comfort zone, you're doing more than what you're used to, and that's in a sense working double because you're pushing the limits. So in a similar way, someone that's pushing the limits is called serving Hashem, and someone that's not pushing the limits is not serving Hashem. Now, this isn't to say the person isn't doing a lot of mitzvahs, not doing a lot of good things, not making a different tachtenim. Obviously, the person that's doing mitzvahs is doing all these things, but they're not together serving Hashem. The Alter Rebbe explains this to be related to the concept of a tzaddik and a beinoni. He says a tzaddik is not someone that you even say is necessarily serving Hashem. You say that they're an eved. The same way that you say that someone is a chacham, someone that's a chacham isn't someone that's becoming wise. A chacham is someone that is wise. Chacham means that they've already acquired chachma. Same thing with an eved. An eved is someone that's already acquired avdus. The avdus is a part of them. This is what they are. A beinoni is someone that, being an eved is not fully, completely what they are. I mean, to a certain extent, yes, but to a greater extent, it's more fitting to say that they're someone that works. They do work, because a tzaddik is disgusted by bad. The work that they've done to get there is work that they've done. It's something that they've acquired. It's under their belt. A beinoni is not like that. A beinoni is constantly working, constantly struggling. But by a beinoni itself, there are two levels. You have the Ovid Elikim and you have the Le'avadeh. The Ovid Elikim is someone that they're constantly working, they're constantly going against their nature, or even not constantly, but whenever they're going against their nature, they're in the category of Ovid Elikim, because they're working. It's really a struggle. And then sometimes you have a beinoni, and the beinoni isn't working. Why isn't the beinoni working? Could be because the beinoni has, by nature, they have more what we call zisfleish. They're able to sit still and learn more Torah. Whatever the reason might be, they might have less taivas for worldly things. There could be a bunch of reasons. But these reasons contribute to the fact that it's less of a struggle for the beinoni, and the less of a struggle it is for the beinoni, this is why they become in the category of le'avadi, because they're taka not working as hard as their counterpart maybe. The Alter Rebbe says this even applies to someone that has worked on their nature and they've refined their nature to the point that now they have the ability to sit and learn for 26 hours straight, or however long it may be. Once you've come to a point where this is what you're used to, if you're doing what you're used to, you're no longer Begeder Avadeh. And it's not to say that the Avodah that you're doing is a bad thing, but it's the same way that a camel driver that goes 10 units of distance, he's going a full day's work. It's a full distance. It's true. It's 100%, and it's valid and it's important. But at the same time, they're not pushing the boundary. And that's why there's two categories within Beinonim themselves. So with this, we finished Parak Tesvav, Hadar and Alach, Eretz Hashem. And Parak Zayin, the Alter Rebbe pivots, and he says this is a very important, essential thing for Beinonim to know, that their main avodah is the battle, the struggle, to fight against their nature, and to take, as he says, to arouse in the mind, to affect the heart, that even though their heart wants many different things, but to contemplate that they have a neshama that's within them, and the neshama is struggling, it's battling, it's captive in this world. It doesn't want to be here. It wants to be connected to godliness, and the only way that a person, or that a neshama could connect to godliness, is through the fulfillment of the 613 mitzvahs. And that this is the way to take rachmanas, to have mercy on the neshama. The Alter Rebbe says another very important point for the avodah of Beinonim, and he says that a Beinoni might feel down, that their love is not going to be the same as a tzaddik's love. A tzaddik has such an essential love for Hashem that they hate everything that isn't Hashem. They're disgusted. This is their nature. A Beinoni is not like that. A Beinoni fully enjoys things in the world. The Alter Rebbe says, even a person that is really given over to their learning, nevertheless, if they're a Beinoni and not a tzaddik, then that means that ultimately they prefer their bodily needs over learning. They prefer worldly matters over learning. However great they are, this is nature. This is how Hashem made us. So a person might be discouraged by this fact, and knowing that if they're a Beinoni, there's no reliable way to ever have, if you would call it a true love for godliness. The Alter Rebbe says, for this, you should know that when a Beinoni sets out to love Hashem and they arouse within themselves the love that they can through various contemplations, we're going to have many contemplations later, especially in the Lamids, that bring a person to love for Hashem, even though it's not the natural kind of thing that a tzaddik has, but still Hashem completely connects it to Maisa. That is to say that the love doesn't permeate their existence the way that it does by a tzaddik. When a tzaddik does a mitzvah, it's the entirety of their existence that's doing it, because this is what they're completely given over to. And by a Beinoni, it's not like that. They have a whole worldly scheme that they're also given over to. And they're in a sense conquering themselves every time they do a mitzvah, because ultimately, really, 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 they have other things that they'd enjoy doing as much and more. But nevertheless, Hashem says, because ultimately this love that you have is causing you to do the mitzvah in a practical way, the mitzvah is getting done. Therefore, even though really I know that if a person wanted to judge you, they would say, yeah, that's not really fully what you want. You want other things. And it's true. And that argument is 100% true. But nevertheless, this is the meaning of what it says. That when you think good things, when you think things that arouse love for Hashem, for godliness, for Torah and mitzvahs, and that causes practical action, Hashem says, I will consider it as though your entire existence is completely involved. And with this, we've concluded Parak Zayin, as is Hashem, and finished this week. And Amiras Hashem, next week, we will reach the first peak of an explanation, if you will, of the pasuk Yikar V'Lecha, which we said in the introduction is what Tanya is all about, explaining that pasuk, at least the first part of Tanya. And we're going to have other peaks immediately in the parak after that. We're going to go into what it means Ma'id, and then Parak Lamed Hey, if I remember correctly, we're going to have a Tosefes Beer. And but ultimately, this is going to be the first peak of an answer. So look forward to next week.